Hello, everybody. We've got the wonderful Anne here with us for our penultimate episode of the Fire series. And welcome. It's so wonderful to chat with you.
Thank you, Tamron. It's an amazing morning here in Ontario, Canada, and it's amazing to connect with you.
Absolutely. Now, for those of you who haven't been watching the FIRE series, FIRE stands for Financially Independent Retire Early. And the way that Anne and I know each other is that we are part of the same mastermind group because we made the decision to find out whatever the hell you have to find out to be able to be financially independent, retire early. We both follow our wonderful and extremely experienced mentor, Ann Wilson. And we were just having a connect, Ann Becks and I, a couple of days ago. And although we were in Portugal together recently, I didn't realize the work that you did. We never somehow got to talking about your day job because we were talking about ways to build
Right.
assets during our mastermind. But when you did tell me that basically your work is to spend time with people who are ill and support them in their final days of their life effectively, I found that a really, really profound opportunity to talk to somebody who would know very well why it's urgent that we live the life of our dreams, because you get to see people at the end of their life and probably hear them revoicing the regrets of maybe the lives that they didn't lead, all the things that they know they didn't regret doing. So that's just what I wanted to chat about a little bit today, because if we're saying, okay, it's urgent that we redesign our lives to be able to do the things that we want to do, to look at it from the perspective of what happens if you don't, I think is a really powerful paradigm shift. So if you probably get asked this quite a lot, but what's that experience like for you?
So, Tamron, it is a very interesting juxtaposition and experience from, being in Portugal, talking about our assets, talking with our mastermind group. But in reality, it really highlights in my everyday work, which is exposure, and my work in sort of the language that we use is called palliative care, which probably many folks have heard that term before, but certainly what it reflects is caring for people as they are coping with a chronic disease, whether that's cancer, heart failure, lung problems, etc., but that will likely die many times before they really want to. Sometimes it's older folks who feel they've lived a life well, and end of life doesn't hold a lot of regrets. But I have to tell you, Tamron, one of the most profound experiences is as we distill down over time to quality of life pieces that really start to bump up against each other. We don't think in our everyday life, well, gosh, I have to choose between these really well-defined quality of life pieces. For example, someone with acute pain, but the pain medication makes them a bit drowsy. And so they have to choose between drowsiness and pain control, right? If I want to be present with my family and be really clear and not experience drowsiness, then I may have to have a little bit more pain. So in my work, those really defined and small things that when we go through our lives every day, we don't tend to think about those. And so as I work with people, and particularly as end of life starts to come a bit closer for them, I have never heard anyone say, gosh, I wish I would have worked at the office another few hours or earned myself another $5,000. Their experience is that if they have regrets, it's really more around the experience of life, of connection with people. It is frequently about connection with people. And so when I, look at these two arenas of connecting with people around their end of life experience, it really highlights for me the importance of living a life well and living in the present, living these moments, living this beautiful, amazing life now. not waiting for, quote, retirement, if that even exists, But, and I don't mean retirement as in not being able to slow down. I just mean the concept of retirement. But, really just always waiting to live until when retirement arrives or when we can stop this work, but really living in the moment, appreciating and loving our connections with our family, our friends, what's most meaningful in our lives, the experiences that we have. That is what the dying talk about when I visit with them, and their families talk about. Really being clear and really distilling down what is most important in their life and how they've lived it.
Yeah. As I'm listening to you, I'm just feeling this real deep sense of contemplation coming over me. It's a really enormous and heavy topic that we're discussing. And some of you who've been watching the FIRE series, we talked about what it means to be financially independent, retire early. Then I talked to some two other friends of mine who are on that path. And then it might seem a bit kind of, what's Cameron talking about now with Anne, where we're talking about what happens at the end of your life. But the reality is, just like people don't want to talk about money and finances, which is why a lot of us don't know what the hell we're doing, a lot of people also don't want to think about the fact that we're going to die. We are going to die.
Yes.
Whenever somebody dies, in my community, in my world, especially if they die before time, it always jolts me and kind of makes me feel this real sense of urgency. I remember a friend of mine died a couple of years ago by surprise. And I remembered a Steve Jobs quote where he said that he wakes up and he reminds himself, he asks himself, if I were to die today, am I spending my day today the way that I would want to if it was my last? And when that friend of mine died, I actually put a photo of his face up on my bathroom mirror to ask myself the same question, because I find it a really confronting way to get serious about your priorities.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's the urgency, and that's really the message that I would say I take home every day is not that I live it perfectly, because it's so easy to get caught up in the rat race of life, but the urgency to live well and to make the most of our time, of our days. This working for the time money exchange that we have every day in our jobs. As we've talked about with Anne and in our group, and and all the work that Anne does, it really reflects, doesn't it, about that it's time that's limited, and we don't even know when that might be. I mean, we're sitting here talking today, but we don't know the possibility of what end of life may come for us. But I have to tell you, many of the folks I see wish that they had a little more time. And once that is landed, that gosh, time is short, and reflecting on what really is important, I can't tell you how important it is that we live this beautiful, wonderful, amazing life that is just, can be, messy at times, but it is the full catastrophe living. It is this beautiful, wonderful, catastrophic life with all of its ups and downs that is to be treasured, and being able to experience the life's experiences without having to work until we're 70 or 75 at a time money exchange is really to live its fullest, to live its best, and really use the lessons of those that are dying to really inform us how we move forward in our lives and live this beautiful life to its maximum.
Yeah, there was an article that became quite popular a couple of years ago that I paid a lot of attention to. I think somehow it's also just a bit of a morbid fascination with this idea of what happens to you when you're close to the end of your life. But it was an article written by somebody who works in palliative care, who said, here are the top 10 things that I hear most frequently. And I remember every time that article showed up on my newsfeed, I clicked on it again, because somehow in your core that those are truths that you rather want to face than put off, even if it's uncomfortable to face them, because you might know that the life you're living now isn't aligned with those truths that are are really what you care about. So, I mean, really the essence of the FIRE movement are you don't have to wait.
Yes.
This whole old paradigm, the old tracks, the old script is about, putting off and waiting until retirement. And in the meantime, you get a job and you go there every day. And we're living in a time where with technology and with automation and with the internet, I mean, we're sitting across the world from each other right
Yeah.
now having a conversation. It's amazing. And we're so privileged to be living in a time where there are actually other options, whatever that might mean for you, in alignment with what makes your heart sing, what juices you, to use Ann's terms, what excites you.
Yes.
I try to encourage people to follow their greatest excitement, and I talk about a breadcrumb trail. You just kind of know when you find another piece in your puzzle. And I think it's important to acknowledge that that's going to look different for every person. But you'll know when something makes you excited. It's a kind of physiological measurement stick of something that's awesome for you to pursue. And I guess the essence of what we're saying now is that it isn't a case of saying one day. It's actually urgent.
Yes. I could not agree more. And I absolutely love the little breadcrumb analogy and finding, because sometimes, people say, well, I don't even know what that means. Sometimes we've stifled our dreams, our, money has limited time, has limited our ability to dream. And Anne is a big promoter of really thinking outside the box, throwing the walls off, taking the walls down, and just dreaming about what would really be that juicy life to live. And as you said, it's very specific for each person. Some might be, a yacht and a jet and a whatever. And for others, it might be a small, sustainable home in the woods somewhere. It doesn't matter, because it's really what comes back to us, our own personal loves. And to get there, to follow some of those breadcrumbs, to really think about what is the thing that just feels so amazing when you touch into them as a guide to lead you in this beautiful life. Because the living is now. We can die while we're living. In other words, wait for death, or we can live. We know that when we're born, that death will come at some point. So life is for living now, and to wait for down the road, to wait for retirement, to wait for wherever to have the experiences of life, I think is such a shame. And it is one of those key messages that people tell me about when I visit them.
Yeah, that reminds me of a quote. I have no idea who said it, but that everybody dies, but not everybody lives.
Yes, and I think that's very true. It is about living this beautiful life, isn't it? And I think that's one of the greatest joys. It's a piece, Ann Wilson's work has really affected my journey, and for both my husband and I, and we're both in the healthcare professions. But I think, and it's not just about money, but Ann really takes a much broader, holistic perspective of really looking at what is it about living. And it is these little moments. It is this beautiful place that I live and can come out here in the morning and chat with you across the miles to your space in South Africa and my space here in Ontario, Canada, to have a conversation in the morning in this gorgeous place. And I just feel so grateful. And I think gratitude emerges as we follow those breadcrumbs that give us joy. And all of that wraps into a package of living life and living it fully.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're watching this, if you're here live, let us know in the comments if you're here live or if you're watching in the replay. But Ann, have you got any concrete, kind of putting you on the spot here, but the most concrete common things that people wish they had spent more time doing and less time doing, just to bring us to a close as food for thought for those who watch this now and in the future, so that there's some kind of list they can go to and go, holy shit, I'm right in the danger zone here. So have you got any specifics that you could leave us with?
Absolutely. So, and it's just a compilation of I've had 30 plus years in in the healthcare field. And of course, many of them have involved people approaching end of life, and more specifically in the last sort of 4 to 5 years of my career. Relationships, connecting with relationships that are the most meaningful to you. Your children, your parents, your family, your friends, really treasuring those moments of connection. I was just actually to a service on Saturday for a patient that I cared for. It was a celebration of her life, and her husband said to the gathering there, "What I miss most is that Kathy isn't here by my side, and she would just love this place, this opportunity." And she said, "Please treasure your family, treasure the moments that you share together, because at some time they will be lost." So relationships is a huge one for folks. And some of them are super small, Tamara, and some of them are just these small moments of the flowers, the things we walk past and nod at to say, "Gosh, oh, isn't that beautiful?" And we move on, but we don't actually take the moment to really sit with it. And so some of the neurophysiology and the neurobiology is that we can wire a pathway of gratitude, of joy, if we spend a minimum of 30 seconds. And 30 seconds things, well, that's just a flash. But if you actually time out 30 seconds to really appreciate the beauty of a flower, it actually is a little moment. But do you know what? When you do that, you actually establish a new little wiring in the brain for capturing joy and connecting to joy. So those small things, the flowers, the taste of a food that you absolutely love, just treasuring the smoothness of chocolate or whatever it is that just excites you, but really experiencing that, sitting with that without moving on so quickly to the next thing. Enjoying the everyday moments of nature, being in nature, exposed to nature. Many people talk about living in nature. And I think the opposite, the flip of what I hear is, we get on this treadmill of running over the course of our everyday, right? It's easy to climb on that treadmill, and I find myself on it too.
Yeah.
But when people reflect on that treadmill, they really talk about, "Gosh, I thought I needed to do that. I thought I needed to get on that treadmill and not step off." But choosing the moments to step off and really embracing those moments. Yes, there's work to be done, and there's things, even if it's what you're passionate about, even if it's the work of your life, it's easy to get caught up in that. But to be able to step off and use those moments really consciously to connect. The extra 1,000 or the extra 2,000 or the extra million at the end of life is actually quite meaningless. It's the experiences that we not just have, but actually love and appreciate and feel aligned with in our hearts that is the most meaningful. So I would say, if you really wanted to distill that down, it's the everyday. It's the living. It's the glance with your partner in those moments of deep connection. It's the flower that you see. It's the child that is with you, and the little moments that you have of just pure joy, just to let your heart expand and really feel those moments are what is the most meaningful pieces. And if that's one message that I could leave with people, is to live now. And I have to tell you, one of the certifications that I hold is in dignity therapy. And that is sitting with someone who kind of reviews their life as sort of through a photo album, and we record that, and then it's documented into a legacy document. But as I was doing my training, one of the women who was doing her dignity therapy, and she allowed all of us to be witness to it, turned to us afterwards and said, "If there's one thing that I can leave you with, live this beautiful life right now. Don't put it off." And I think there just is no truer summed up words than that, is to really live this beautiful, wonderful life that we have the privilege of being present in, and treasuring each of those moments. That's the richness, I think, of our human experience that allows us to feel, when that time of life comes for us, that we have lived well.
Yeah. Wow. As I'm feeling really moved having listened to you talk, because it's not a kind of intellectual thing you're sharing with us. You know, it's a, this is what I've seen, this
Yeah.
is what my patients have shown me.
Yeah.
So I feel just really deeply connected to that truth. And it's no surprise that immediately my mind, in this kind of emotional place, moves to, this is urgent. How the hell do you
Yes.
give yourself the space and the
Yeah.
opportunity to be present with life? Because like you say, if you're kind of getting up in the morning, you're getting in your car, you're dashing off to your work, you're in your office all day, you come home when it's dark, you are not giving yourself even the opportunity to stop and stare at the flowers, never mind to connect with your toddler. And I mean, I'm certainly can feel become guilty of becoming quite busy. So I have a
Yeah.
lot of projects on the go under the guise of it being my purpose work. So as you were saying that, I was
Yeah.
like, holy shit, I'm teaching about this and I'm still, I can't. So I work in seasons. This is another video, but basically I work in a sprint, and then I have an off season and a sprint and an off season. And during a sprint, it can be pretty sprinty. But even then, I will be outside a few times in the day, just hanging out on the grass with my toddler, because a toddler can slow you down to notice things. You know, they're up in the grains of sand and they're smelling the flowers. So
Yes.
I'm doing that a couple of times a day, but I could still, even I, the ambassador for the fire movement, could do more. But if you're nowhere even near spending a couple of hours in the garden with your toddler every day, and you're thinking, how the hell do I build that kind of opportunity into my life to be able to appreciate relationships and nature and all of the simple things? And notice that everything you mentioned had nothing to do with money, which is very directly linked to the fire movement. The fire movement is
Yes.
not about accumulating as much wealth as you can. The fire movement is
No.
about simplifying your life so that you have the time to do other things. And that might not
Absolutely.
look like a mortgage and a car and a this. It might just look like, what do you truly need?
Yes.
And there's so many ways to do that. So you can, if you're watching just this episode for the first time, I talk about businesses that are low input, that don't take all your time. We live in a magical age of the internet and automation and all kinds of crazy things like that. There's so many opportunities, and you're welcome to get in touch with either of us if you want to know more about that. But it sounds like one of the starting points for both Anne and I was to just get serious about, how do we get money supporting your life, not chasing it on a treadmill. So that's another Ann Wilson quote. She says, I'm sorry to let you know, you thought you were here to make millions. What you're here to do is to be able, money allows you to be present with life.
Yes.
And that's what I'm busy building my financial freedom, my financial independence for, is to be present with this crazy, beautiful, amazing, terrifying catastrophe that is life. Yes, so I really appreciate you sharing all of that with us, because it's profoundly important to just pause and reflect on that.
Yeah, and Tamara, I think, you know, as you mentioned earlier, you know, this can be sort of a gosh, heavy subject. Like, oh my gosh, why would we get to death in this fire movement? You know, most of us want to sort of push that away and stay far away from talking about that, because really what we want to do is live this life. And I would just say it's more to be just used as, what can we learn from that to apply to our lives right now, right in these days. And I absolutely love the whole concept of the fire movement. To this can be a rationale, this can be the urgency to say it is vital that we really dive into what's important to us, and then learn the education pieces of how we can actually create the life, to live this life that is most present and most beautiful, knowing that yes, at some time end of life will come for us all, living this beautiful life with the fullest of intention and experiences, to gather those and sit and be with those, is to live with the most joy. And it isn't just about saying, okay, well, I'm just going to stare at the flowers. No, money is a part of our world, and we have bills to pay and all of that sort of thing. So it's this interface between what we know about what is most meaningful about life through the eyes of those who are facing the end of their life, coupled with what we know about money and how it can really help us to experience life to its fullest, supporting us, not carrying so much angst that drives us on this treadmill that, we don't have time to stop and smell the flowers or be with our toddler in the garden, who's the most beautiful example of living in the present. If we're carrying the angst, the scarcity a mindset around money, that there's not enough money and there's not enough time and there's not enough whatever, it drives us on this treadmill. And if we can start to open our perspective about acknowledging those angst or that fear or whatever, it allows us to actually step off the treadmill and to tie it right back to the lessons that the dying are teaching us, which is about living this life with its fullest experiences. It's not about the gathering of the money. It's about money facilitating the real life, the real purposeful living that creates this joyous, wealthy life. And it's about experiences and people and connections and living from our most sort of heart-centered selves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that was a major epiphany of mine, just to bring this to a close, is that I thought only people who wanted to be mega wealthy or who cared about money invested, which is was just the biggest myth that was keeping me from the ability to be more time free, because actually what it's about is you can start investing with 200 Rand or $200.
Absolutely.
It's not about enormous amounts. And when I had that epiphany, everything started to shift for me.
Yes, I could not agree more. And that's what I so love, is that it's so accessible and just get started. That's the beautiful, beautiful thing. I have 3 sons and I say the same thing to them. Gosh, this is your opportunity. Here's what I'm learning. This is what I've learned. Start this now. Even if it's, $100, just start creating that space, and it will just allow you, with these strategies that we have been learning, to really be able to allow us to live this beautiful life.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think the major takeaway is don't wait. And if you're curious, I think we're on episode 5 now, and of the Fire series. If you haven't watched the first ones, you can go back. You can find them on this Facebook group, Life by Design. And we have just one more episode with the Ann Wilson herself. So keep your eyes out for that coming later this week, where we're going to talk about Ann's journey as well, because Ann wasn't born financially independent. She had her own epiphanies and divorces and meltdowns on apartment floors in Hong Kong, and decided that she was going to figure this out so she could be more present with her own life. And boy, oh boy, is she that, as I mentioned before. And Becks and I are in her mastermind, which is called Gourmet Living, which at first I thought was about only having a fantastic tasting life, but actually it's about the full spectrum of life.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
In all of its catastrophes and beauties. And what she teaches is obviously the mechanics of how to be able to support yourself with assets, but she teaches so much more about how to be fully present with life. So we're going to have her on the final episode of the Fire series this week, and I look forward to seeing you there. It's been such a pleasure to explore this topic with you, Anne, and I'll let you get off to your day now.
Well, thanks so much, Tamara. This has been amazing, and I just love connecting with you, and it's so awesome we can connect from South Africa and Ontario.
Exactly. It's wonderful. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.